Hello, I'm Richard Krueger from the University of Minnesota. This is a series of sessions that deal with focus group interviewing. And today we're going to talk about an important topic. It's when you're doing the analysis, how do you decide what's important when you're preparing the report and doing the analysis? And we're going to suggest today that there's 5 tips to give some thought to as you're doing it. Now, when you're doing analysis, you have an enormous amount of data, and you need a strategy to help you avoid getting overwhelmed with this. And these suggestions we have will help you determine what things should rise to the top and also which things may not have quite as much priority. One of those suggestions is that toward the end of the focus group, consider an ending question. And this might even be a question where they go around the table, each person answering it, and where you ask them, what do they consider to be the most important things that were talked about in the focus group? The answer to this question can help you prioritize the kinds of comments that are said. And it's also a great place to get some wonderful quotes. A second tip to consider is these 4 or 5 kinds of things. We often put frequency and extensiveness together, but they're slightly different. Frequency is simply how often was it said. But sometimes, fairly often, it's more important to look at extensiveness. How many different people made the comments? Both of these are items that can be counted. Be a little careful about counting, but both of these can provide you with some clues. Another important concept is what we call specificity. Were they able to give you details, to talk with descriptive language about things that we're saying? Another important ingredient is emotion. Where there's certain places where there was intensity or passion in what was being said. We look for these because we know that behavior often is related to emotional kinds of identification that people have. And then what were the reactions of other people? Were there certain things said or comments that caused other people to react or possibly even to change their opinions within the course of the group? So this cluster of items is another one that we use to consider what is important to pay attention to. Still another is that we look for things that are clustered together. Now, we don't always know when we're doing what these clusters might be. I mean, it could be that we cluster people by levels of experience or type of experience, or sometimes it's by certain periods of time or how people are using it or other strategies. But one of the things to think about is, are there some ways of clustering or putting things together that might make sense, that might be very useful? One of the things to keep in mind is that listen for what we call isolated gems. These are comments that are said only once, maybe twice, but have high potential. Now, in many forms of research, these are considered, especially quantitative research, we consider these to be outliers, and we sometimes will disregard them. But in focus groups, we pay attention to these. They may provide rich kinds of insight about something that's happening that we hadn't anticipated or didn't know the importance of. If you do cite those, be sure to indicate that they weren't cited with frequency, and then provide the rationale as to why you're calling attention to these things. Finally, one of the important things is what enlightens the reader or the user. Think about who is going to be looking at the material. Is there a reader? Is there a client? Is it for other kinds of academics? What is it that will raise their level of knowledge? Think about what they already know and what you've learned that adds to that level of enlightenment. Well, these are some of the things that will help you. In our final session, which will come next, we're going to be talking about how you prepare a report in a focus group. Thank you.